All yours.
Alrighty, so meeting is called to order at 5:03. And we do have a quorum. All four of our members are here. We need to approve the previous meeting's minutes. Those are the Gallagher in part one and the Dowdy field. Did you get those? So do you want to make a motion to approve them?
I move that we approve the minutes from the meeting on November 3rd and the 17th, is that right?
Yes.
Second.
Charles second.
All in favor?
You guys have to speak up.
Okay. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the continuation of the application for administrative appeal to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals by James Gallagher et al. And as a reminder, this hearing was closed to public comment on November 30th, November 3rd. So tonight, we are just conducting deliberations and reaching a decision. So. Okay, so we'll start with Cheryl.
Okay, so we are reassessing the board's standing and reviewing the findings of fact to enlarge the 30-day deadline to appeal.
Yes,
Is that correct?
just
Okay. In regards to enlarging the 30-day deadline to appeal, the findings of fact are as follows. The Town of Big Island zoning and shoreline zoning ordinances do not specifically enshrine an abutter or interested party's right to be notified in a timely fashion about pending permits on a neighbor's property. The code enforcement officer admitted to not making the file available to the public in a fashion and a time frame that would allow an interested party to appeal any permit pertaining to 107 Cottage Road. The CEO also admitted to not returning phone calls and emails from the appellants and their legal representatives in a fashion and a time frame that could allow an interested party to appeal any permit pertaining to 107 Cottage Road. There are no records in the file of the phone calls and emails. The CEO admitted to having a full-time job as a CEO in Old Orchard Beach and thus having limited time to deal with the issues arising as a result of his part-time job as CEO of the Town of Big Island. The Board of Adjustments and Appeals did not receive the complete file on 107 Cottage Road until the evening of November 3rd, 2022 hearing, when the CEO supplied the board with a paper copy. The appellant's Exhibit 17 shows a photocopy of an electrical permit application dated 10/21/22 that was not included in the paper file that was supplied to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. The CEO admitted that some of the permits had been misfiled and it took him a while to realize it. The point made by the permittees that the CEO had office hours on island approximately 14 times between the time of appellant's initial inquiries about the availability of the file and the time they actually received access to the file is not relevant. The relevant point is that the public file was not available or complete during this period, thus stymieing appellant's efforts and ability to file an appeal in the timeframe specified in the Shoreland zoning ordinance and denying the right to due process. Conclusions. With respect to the first part of the appeal, the Board of Adjustments and Appeal has found that there is good cause to extend the window of the appeal to ensure that the appellant's right to due process is not denied. Although the town's zoning and shoreland zoning ordinances do not specifically enshrine in the butter or interested parties' right to be notified in a timely fashion about pending permits on a neighbor's property, the CEO has a duty to make a file available to the public, whether in an actual paper file or a virtual file or both in a timely fashion. Otherwise, the time frame delineated in the ordinances to make an appeal is meaningless. The CEO did not make the file available in a timely fashion, nor did he promptly answer emails or telephone calls pertaining to this issue. The following motion was made by Cheryl Stevens and seconded by Tad Runge. The Board of Adjustments and Appeal should approve extending the time of the appeal beyond 30 days. The Board of Adjustments and Appeals voted unanimously 4-0 to approve the motion.
Okay, so the next part is whether shoreland zoning permit was issued in error. The findings of fact. First, we're just going to do general ones. Ann and James Gallagher are the owners of 113 Cottage Road, and Jeffrey and Norma Drew are the owners of 121 Cottage Road. Both are abutters of 107 Cottage Road. Michael and Mary McKee are the owners of 107 Cottage Road. The lot was deeded in 3 portions in successive quitclaim deeds from Linda McKee to Michael McKee on 12/17/04, from Shannon Meredith to Michael and Mary McKee for $1 on 6/13/18, and from David Meredith to Michael and Mary McKee for $27,000 on 8/2/19. The purpose of the shoreland zoning ordinance, according to section 102, is to further the maintenance of safe and healthful conditions, to prevent and control water pollution, to protect fish spawning grounds, aquatic life, bird and other wildlife habitat, to protect buildings and lands from flooding and accelerated erosion, to protect archaeological and historic resources, to protect commercial fishing and maritime industries, to protect freshwater and coastal wetlands, to control building sites, placement of structures and land uses, to conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland and coastal waters, to conserve natural beauty and open space, and to anticipate and respond to the impacts of development in shoreland areas. The shoreland zoning ordinance and the zoning ordinance have been enacted to protect and preserve the town of Cheviot Island. According to zoning ordinance section 601.1 and shoreland zoning ordinance section 509.2, the CEO's duty is to enforce the provisions of this ordinance. There is no provision in the zoning or shoreland zoning ordinance allowing the CEO to decide which of the provisions to enforce. There is no revision of zoning ordinance section 601.1 or shoreland zoning ordinance section 509.2 to grant the CEO leeway to relax his oversight of the ordinances during pandemic lockdown. The CEO's duty is to enforce the provisions of the ordinance regardless of a permit applicant's personal situation or that of the world at large. The CEO admitted to relaxing the rules pertaining to a shoreland project permit application for the applicants. The CEO stated that he liked to work with property owners to not put overdue burden on them. The ordinance governing the duties of the CEO makes no exception for jobs that are rushed or urgent, or for ones that have a lot of moving parts. The ordinance governing the duties of the CEO contains no clause advising the CEO not to put overdue burden on applicants. Both shoreland zoning and zoning ordinance section 602.1b specify that each application to the CEO for a permit to erect a new building or structure or to enlarge or to move an existing one shall be accompanied by a site plan showing the measurements and of the lot and of all buildings, yards, and parking spaces existing and proposed. The intended uses of land and buildings shall be indicated clearly. According to shoreline zoning and zoning ordinance, section 108, the word shall means that the specified instruction is mandatory. According to the application checklist on the shoreline project permit application, all of the following information is required and must be submitted for all shoreline zoning permit applications. Scaled plot plan with all lot lines, including existing and proposed changes. Tree cutting applications must include a scaled plot plan with all lot lines clearly labeling each tree requesting to be cut, their type and diameter. All contractors disturbing more than 1 cubic yard of material must provide a Department of Environmental Protection certification number and right, title, or interest for proposed application. The shoreline project permit application submitted does not include a scaled plot plan. The CEO characterized the plot plan submitted as a rough drawing that was conceptual at the time. Despite the lack of a scaled plot plan, the CEO issued the permit anyway because he knew a plan would be forthcoming. There is no scaled plot plan for the shoreline zoning project or for any of the projects approved for 107 Cottage Road. There is no scaled plot plan for tree cutting. There are no copies of the 3 quitclaim deeds cited by the applicant, all of which are needed to establish right, title, or interest. No contractor DEP certification number is in the file. Because the application form states that all of the following information is required, the CEO cannot issue a shoreline zoning permit for which the shoreline project permit application is incomplete. The CEO cannot base his decisions on what the permittees may someday do with the lot. The CEO must base permitting decisions on what a given application asks for and whether it meets all ordinances. According to zoning ordinance section 601.4 and shoreline zoning ordinance section 509.2.c, the CEO shall keep a complete record of all essential transactions of the office, including applications submitted, shoreline zoning permits granted or denied, variances granted or denied, revocation actions, revocation of shoreline zoning permits, appeals, court actions, violations investigated, violations found, and fees collected. On a biennial basis, a summary of this record shall be submitted to the Director of the Bureau of Land and Water Quality with the DEP. There is no evidence in the file that any such records were kept, nor that any were submitted to the DEP. There is no record of any of the requests for the file, which the CEO characterized as the most requested file on the island. The entry for receipt number has been left blank. According to the town TOCI, we can just skip that. With respect to how the CEO shall apply the various sections of the shoreline zoning ordinance, the zoning ordinance states in section 108 and the shoreline zoning ordinance in section 107 says that whenever a provision of this ordinance conflicts with or is inconsistent with another provision of this ordinance or of any of the other ordinance, regulation, or statute administered by the municipality, the more restrictive provision shall control. Do you want to read?
Yeah.
This is your baby.
The Maine DEP requires that any contractor working in the municipal shoreline zone must ensure an individual certified in erosion and sedimentation control practices by Maine DEP is present on the site during all phases of soil disturbance and is responsible for the installation and maintenance of any best management practices. According to the Shoreline Zoning Ordinance 304.2, covering erosion and sedimentation control in the shoreline zone, all activities which involve filling, grading, excavation, or other similar activities which result in unstabilized soil conditions and which require a permit shall also require a written soil erosion and sedimentation control plan. The plan shall be submitted to the permitting authority for approval and shall include, where applicable, provisions for A, mulching and revegetation of disturbed soil, B, temporary runoff control features such as hay bales, silt fencing, or diversion ditches, C, permanent stabilization structures such as retaining walls or riprap. File contains no written soil erosion and sedimentation control plan. The checklist for the shoreland project permit application states that all contractors disturbing more than 1 cubic yard of material must provide a DEP certification number. The contractor whose credentials were included in the application provided a certificate with no authorized signature or official seal. The CEO admitted to failing to verify that the contractor in charge overseeing erosion control activities in the shoreland zone, according to Maine law, was in possession of a valid certificate. According to the DEP website, this contractor is not on their 2022 list of individuals certified in erosion control practices. John McLean, Non-Point Source Training Center Coordinator, Officer of the Commissioner, Maine Department of Environmental Protection, has stated that his records show that a certificate for Stu Brown at SKB Contracting was certified previously, but the certification expired 12/31/2018. He would be eligible for reinstatement upon completion of at least 5 continuing education hours. The CEO admitted that he had this uncertified contractor oversee the site, largely relied on the contractor's judgment that work was done properly.
Okay, now we're gonna stop a little bit. We had a lot of problems with non-conforming and conforming lots, so we need, this is Cheryl's email. So we have a little chain of title of lot 7, and we can look at it and then go into our non-conforming lot worksheet, and then we'll go back to the findings of fact, and we should be fine. So, yeah. So the subdivision, which included like 19 acres or something, was created on December 28th, 1907. That's book 816, page 391 of the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds. Lot 7 is set off to Seth Larrabee and Frederick Roby. And this lot has 247 feet of road frontage and 218 feet of shore frontage. It goes through, it's sold in 2009.
No, 1909.
Is that 1909? 1909, and then someone leaves it to his heirs, and then they sell it in 1913, 1931, 1940. 1931, here, they sell lot 7 to Isidore Bucksbaum for $233. And Bucksbaum gives it to his daughter, Lillian B. Meredith. She in turn conveys by quit claim deed it to Wilbur Meredith, David Meredith, and Linda McKee. And Wilbur and David and Linda convey it to, as joint tenants in common, a portion of lot 7 to Russell and Elda Willem. This is on March 17th, 1988. The lot is intended to convey 93,925 square feet and has 151 feet of road frontage and 100 feet of shore frontage. The deed gives grantees the right to cut trees and underbrush to maintain a view of the ocean, and for grantors to do the same. So this subdivision of the lot in 1988 leaves the former old lot 7 with 96 feet of road frontage and 118 feet of shore frontage.
And it's very confusing because all of the 3 quitclaim deeds describe the full lot 7, but reference this deed from 1988 as well as the deed from 1976.
Right, and it's like, in normal life, you'd say, I have this pie, I'm going to give you half of it. But in legal terms, they say, I'm giving you the whole of the pie, except that half of it is gone.
Except these deeds apply, and you have to go look those up to figure
Right.
out you only have half
So
the
it's
pie.
not very straightforward, especially, so there we are with half the lot, which is non-conforming with respect to road frontage and shore frontage. Okay, so we got with us, Charles, over there. Okay, so the next part is the non-conforming lot worksheet. And we'll just, according to section 609 of the zoning ordinance, this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon its adoption unless otherwise provided at said town meeting, July 1st, 2007. And according to 609 of the shoreline zoning ordinance, this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon its adoption by the town meeting, except otherwise, unless otherwise provided at said town meeting, April 7th, 2018. Okay, according to zoning ordinance, section 2041C, the following lot standards shall apply to all lots within the Island Residential District created on August 1st, 1975 or later. 1.5 acre minimum lot size. In the case of duplex development, there shall be no less than 0.94 acre of lot area per dwelling unit. 3, there shall be no less than 150 feet of lot frontage. According to zoning ordinance section 204.1D, the following minimum setbacks are required for all structures in the Island Residential District that are more than 1.5 acres in size or that were created on or after August 1st, 1975. Except that sheds and driveways are permitted to a minimum setback of 15 feet from the side and rear lot lines, and shoreline setbacks shall be as required by the shoreline zoning ordinance. Therefore, these are the requirements that apply to 107 Cottage Road. The 107 Cottage Road lot was created on March 17, 1988. After the date of August 1st, 1975, specified for lot standards in section 204.1C. This 1988 conveyance specifically deeded 151 feet of the 247 feet of road frontage to the new, now Gallagher lot, and 100 feet of the original 218 feet of shore frontage. This created a non-conforming lot with respect to road frontage and shore frontage, 96 feet and 118 feet, rather than the required 150 feet and 150 feet. Okay, so a non-conforming or grandfathered property is a use, structure, or lot that existed lawfully prior to the enactment of the zoning ordinance and has been continuously maintained since the effective date of that ordinance. Even though it doesn't meet the standards the ordinance says it must meet for the particular zoning district it is located in. This type of lot is called a non-conforming lot of record. As examples, think of the small properties like at the end of Caps Road and some of the other ones created when they were selling lots of little lots. So those have been around before 1975. So similarly, before the 1988 subdivision, Lot 7 was a conforming lot. After subdivision, however, it became non-conforming. In other words, this non-conforming lot was created after the ordinance was adopted and not before. So the portion of Lot 7 left after the 1988 subdivision did not meet rules in place at the time or rules in place currently because it has never been in compliance and therefore does not meet the definition of a non-conforming lot of record. In addition, zoning ordinance section 110 in defining net residential acreage states that net residential acreage shall be determined by subtracting from gross acreage available the following: A, 15% for roads and parking; C, other areas which are difficult to develop in their natural state because of topography, drainage, or subsoil conditions. Specific conditions include, but are not limited to, slopes in excess of 20% sustained for 30,000 square feet or more, and wetlands. The rest is.
The only other section of the ordinance is the one that the town attorney cited, which is 205.3 of the zoning ordinance, that states that a non-conforming lot that can be developed is one that is in separate and distinct ownership from adjoining lots as of July 1, 2007. That date is the date the town was.
But it's not a non-conforming lot of record. It's not a legal non-conforming lot. The town of Cumberland, apparently they had lots of problems with lots on the island when we were still part of Cumberland. So eventually they came up with this date of August 1st, 1975 as a cutoff. So that's what's been used. So if your lot was created on August 2nd, 1975, and it's non-conforming, you're basically screwed.
Well, that's probably when the zoning ordinance went into place that affected the town of Big Island, which was part of the town of Cumberland zoning ordinance.
Right, but that's the law, that's the rule that we have.
Okay.
And yet,
You want,
I recall being on this board, there was some question about Peggy Jones. Peggy Jones owned some land up by her house, and she wanted to sell that land. But that land, she wasn't able to because it was contiguous with her property. And when we adopted the zoning ordinance in 2007, it then joined that little non-conforming lot to her property.
Yeah.
So are we sure that something that, as Shabig Island, that we didn't adopt our zoning in 2007, because our zoning is, it's not Cumberland zoning.
Yes,
It
it
may be
is.
modeled after.
it basically is.
It
We
was the model
voted
that we
to-
adopted, but it wasn't the same document.
It pretty much is. It's also
The
the
two or
same document.
the two or more lots that are contiguous and in the same ownership is actually a state law.
Yeah, most of these things in
And-
here are state laws.
And it's, it is intended for non-conforming lots, if they're right next to each other, to be joined so they can become conforming. In fact, it happened to us, and we're still not conforming, but we're a little bigger now, And that's why she couldn't sell that lot, because it wasn't a separate lot anymore, because her other lot was non-conforming.
But that's not the case here, because this lot was divided. Part of it was sold to the Gwillums, who then sold it to Lee and Susan's parents.
And our zoning ordinance does reference the 1975.
Yes,
in the
that
black
it
and white.
clearly says that, it's a cutoff, so that's a problem. So, right there, you have a big problem with building anything on this lot. So,
Although 205.3 does say in any district, notwithstanding, which means regardless of limitations imposed by other provisions of this ordinance, a single lot of record as
It's
of
not
the
a-
effective date of adoption of this ordinance may be built upon subject to the following conditions.
It's not a lot of record
Okay.
because it's not in conformance with our zoning ordinance and never was. If it had been the 1907 lot 7, yep.
Oh, I see.
So that's, I think the problem here is you don't have a non-conforming lot that's properly, I mean, it's not been grandfathered, it's just wrong, so. Okay. So, I think we read most of these things for record, but I guess we have to, since that was just a little segue into conforming and non-conforming laws, I guess we can go back to. You want to read this? I mean,
Sure.
some of this we went over, but
Okay, these are characteristics of a lot, non-conforming versus conforming lot. According to zoning ordinance, section 204.1.c, the following lot standards shall apply to all lots within the island residential district created on August the 1st, 1975, or later. 1.5, some of this is repetitious.
yeah, so
So
we can maybe skip on that since it may be in the record.
that we already know. With even here, shoreline setback shall be required by shoreline zoning ordinance. So the lot, the 107 Cottage Road lot was created on the 17th of March, 88. After the date of August 1st, 1975, again, we repeat, this is a repeat.
Yeah,
The 1988 split of the property specifically deeded 151 feet of the original 247 feet of road frontage to the new, now Gallagher lot, and 100 feet of the original 218 feet of shore frontage as well. This caused the remaining portion of the lot to become non-conforming with respect to road frontage and shore frontage. 96 feet on the road, 118 feet respectively on the shore, rather than the required 150 and 150 feet.
yeah.
So we repeat that section. Before the 1988 subdivision, lot 7 was a conforming lot. After the subdivision, however, it became non-conforming. In other words, this non-conforming lot was created after the ordinance was adopted and not before. So the portion of the lot 7 left after 1988 subdivision did not meet rules in place at the time or rules in place currently because it has never been in compliance and therefore does not meet the definition of non-conforming lot of record. It's not a grandfather lot.
Right. A lot of words to say.
I just keep, my
Yeah, so maybe we can
own
skip on
research on this, it kept coming up. with
the
not
grandfather.
grandfather, it's not grandfather.
Sounds much more pleasant. huh?
It
So I
does, it
guess
does, I
I
like
think,
that word, yeah. The 1907 lot, Cottage Road lot, is non-conforming with both respect to road frontage, as 96 feet, rather than the required 150, and particularly as it relates to this appeal, the shore frontage, 118 feet, rather than the required minimum 150 feet.
yeah, we can also say, there's that. Let's say that. A second.
I
That's
think they
just-
went over that, didn't they?
Yeah, okay.
If I could just throw up a red herring.
Sure.
typically lots that like what you're describing are considered unbuildable and are taxed accordingly. I don't know if there's a code or what that's put on the tax record. This lot was never designated that way. And also the other lot that was sold off in 1988, they built on that.
And we don't have to concern ourselves with that.
No. But I mean, it is kind of makes me wonder.
What went before is not our problem. We're just dealing with this lot here. Because the one possibility is that it has the acreage. But no, the second thing is it cannot be built on at all without a variance granted by the Board of Adjustment and Appeals as a non-conforming lot, not a non-conforming lot of record. So
In theory, it could be built on with a variance if the variance was issued.
I see.
but we would have to
We
rule
would
on
have to rule on that, yes.
which. So according to zoning ordinance, section 202.2, the shoreline zoning overlay districts depicted on the official zoning map shall be controlled by the shoreline zoning ordinance of Shabig Island under a separate ordinance. Whenever there is a conflict between this ordinance and the shoreline zoning ordinance, the more restrictive provisions shall control. According to zoning ordinance, section 205.3, variance of setback requirements shall be obtained only through action of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. And this is all about a non-conforming lot of record, the section 401.1, but we're not talking about a non-conforming lot of record. So it doesn't matter if they may be built on, because that's not what we're dealing with. So section 401.1 cannot be applied to 107 Cottage Road because this lot is not a non-conforming lot of record, nor does it meet the requirements for road frontage, shore road frontage, net residential acreage, and most likely lot width. Shoreland zoning ordinance, section 204.2 specifies the minimum shore frontage as 200 feet, with the additional proviso that the minimum width of any portion of any lot within 100 feet horizontal distance of the normal high water line of a water body or upland edge of a wetland shall be equal to or greater than the shore frontage requirement for a lot with the proposed use. That is 150 feet or greater. 107 Cottage Road has 118 feet of shore frontage. Because the plot plan included with the shoreline project permit application is not precise or detailed, whether the width of the lot equals or exceeds 150 feet at its widest point cannot be determined. The width of the lot does not appear to exceed 150 feet at any point, let alone in the shoreline zone. In addition, on a parcel of land with coastal bluffs that have been rated unstable or highly unstable by the Maine Geological Survey and published on the most recent coastal bluff map, setback measurements for principal structures shall be taken from the top of that bluff, not the normal high water line or upland edge of the coastal wetland. So, the next part deals with zoning.
Do we know if this is an unstable bluff?
Yes, it's defined right in our appendix C, appendix B of the zoning ordinance. It's classified as unstable bluff. It's
Oh,
shown,
coastal bluff hazards?
yeah, it's in your copy too. But we can see,
Oh, my goodness.
yes,
I'm looking at my lot. Site of former landslide.
site of former landslides. And then it's an area greater than 1 acre. It basically goes from, looks like maybe the Shaddocks, all the way down into the Gallagher. So. I mean, it's right there in our ordinance. You know.
We'll do something.
Yeah, how you want to, I can take you, take it.
Where are
We're up at,
we? Zoning?
yeah.
I think it's Charles' turn.
Charles, you want to read it or no? No, he doesn't want to. Okay, Cheryl, take it away.
All right, starting here? Okay. Zoning. In numerous cases in Maine, the court has found that the spirit of zoning ordinances is to restrict rather than to increase any non-conforming uses and to secure their gradual elimination. Accordingly, provisions of a zoning regulation for the continuation of such uses should be strictly construed, and provisions limiting non-conforming uses should be liberally construed. The right to continue non-conforming use is not a perpetual easement to make use of one's property to the detriment of one's neighbors and forbidden to them, and non-conforming uses will not be permitted to multiply when they are harmful or improper. And this is from Lovely versus Zoning Board of Appeals of Presque Isle and numerous other court cases. Shoreland zoning ordinance, section 202, states that where uncertainty exists as to the exact location of district boundary lines, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals shall be the final authority as to location. The district objectives of shoreland zoning ordinance, section 203, state that no building shall hereafter be erected or altered to house a greater number of families, or to have a smaller setback, or to occupy a smaller lot than is specified herein for the district in which such building is located. According to the definition of districts in the Shoreland Zoning Ordinance, section 204.1.a, the Resource Protection Overlay District includes areas in which development would adversely affect water quality, productive habitat, biological ecosystems, or scenic and natural values. This district shall include the following areas when they occur within the limits of the shoreland area, except the areas which are currently developed and areas which meet the criteria for limited commercial or commercial fisheries / maritime activities overlay districts need not be included within the Resource Protection Overlay District. Areas of 2 or more contiguous acres with sustained slopes of 20% or greater and land areas adjacent to tidal waters which are subject to severe erosion or mass movement, such as steep coastal bluffs as shown in the coastal bluff maps in Appendix B. I'm not sure whether that's a complete sentence, but I just said it.
Yeah, so. definition of district.
That's a long
And,
sentence.
yeah, so resource protection overlay district includes
Shall
areas in
include.
which blah, 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 blah.
Except that.
Okay. So we already looked at the coastal bluff map, which is in the shoreline zoning ordinance. So you want, are you tired?
According to Maine State Law, section 957-A.1.g, a resource protection district includes, quote, areas of 2 or more contiguous acres with sustained slopes of 20% or greater. Maine State Law goes on to state prohibited uses within the resource protection district shall include structures designed for human habitation. The Shoreland project permit application file includes a topographical map that is largely unreadable except to confirm the presence of a steep slope across the property and beginning approximately 250 feet from Cottage Road. The lot in question is in the Island I'm not sure about this.
Well, resource protection overlay.
I know, I'm just not sure that it's in the resource protection overlay.
If it has coastal bluff hazards, it is.
So any of these pink areas are in resource protection.
They meet the definition. Resource protection overlay district includes areas of 2 or more contiguous acres
Oh.
with sustained slopes of
So you have to have 2
20% of
acres?
grade. Not in one lot.
Oh,
Areas
the same
of-
slopes
Yeah,
have to
so
be.
land areas adjacent to tidal waters which are subject to a severe erosion or mass movement, such as steep coastal bluffs, as shown in the coastal bluff map of here, which is fairly opaque, but maybe there's a better copy somewhere.
I don't know if there is.
This is the only map that's made any sense to me.
Oh, well, where's the?
The other
Well, the other
ones,
map has a higher level of detail.
yeah,
but it doesn't
I've never
cover
seen
the-
this one.
It doesn't cover the same area.
It doesn't, yeah.
It doesn't have anything on it. It does show that there are different gradations in these areas.
And
There
then
are more
map-
distinct areas.
Yeah,
But none of that is anything, we're talking about.
Right.
something that's over
I
here.
know. Where's the rest of the map?
Yeah,
Oh, well, I think it was so large that if you look in the appendix, it's so large, it takes like 5 pages. Because it comes from some national data
it's
thing.
folded up.
No, I mean, no, it's just, it looks like someone. No, someone took a picture of it in like 5 separate sections. So that's the best that you get unless you go in the national. Let me see. See, Charles, look, this is what the shoreline zoning appendix gives us,
Oh,
like these funky pictures. So there's the really small map and there's the text that you
Yeah.
cannot read unless you're an ant or something.
and then,
Yeah, so you can zoom in, but there we are, right here. In the yellow, which is according to this map, if you want to zoom in. Unstable, something or other. Right there. Okay. Oops.
okay.
So unstable,
Green is stable,
yellow is unstable,
and red is highly unstable.
so that
And then
would be
if you
like
go
Martin Pro, so
If you go back to the map,
this is in yellow, unstable. Yeah.
where's your plus and minus?
Yeah, probably. So see, here's yellow, we're right here,
How do we know we're right there?
because you can overlay this map on it.
I mean, if we're right there and there's green right on the other side,
Yeah, but there's white, it doesn't really, I
I mean,
mean,
how do you know where you are?
because you can if you wanted to overlay a map, you could, but see, here it is shown in slightly different, the coastal bluff map here, show it this way.
Yeah,
So the site of former landslide and blah, blah. And then it's also, if it's a coastal bluff, it's gonna be in the steep slope zone, which it obviously is. So it's one of those, if you're in the coastal bluff zone with unstable soil, then you're in the steep slope zone, which is by definition in the resource protection zone, according to Maine state law and our ordinances. So once you get into the resource protection zone, I guess it gets a whole lot more difficult to build on things. In fact, the Maine state law says something about, what did you just read, Cheryl? Something about prohibited uses within the resource protection district shall include structures designed for human habitation. So,
It's interesting on these maps. On this one, area less than 1 acre is green.
but
I know, but what does that have to do with anything?
it's just a map showing,
Steep slopes.
yeah, so the red ones are greater, and here's steep slopes, but they're not big areas. The main law covers areas of
2 acres.
or more.
And it doesn't matter if the 2 acres are owned by the same person.
Right, right. It doesn't say anything about that, like that's Deer Point, right? And then the other side of Deer Point. So. So we're up to, yeah. Oh, wow, where'd you get that?
Wow, where'd you get that?
That was the original, zoning book that I got when I first joined, shows how long I've been on here.
Look,
This
there
is
are only
90
two houses on the island
That's
at
right,
that point.
that's right. This is a 99.
State law, if you want. So I think we got to there. What's that?
Must be the-
Resource. I just asked.
Okay, the lot in question is in the Island Residential Resource Protection, that's IRRP district, not the IR, Island Residential Limited Protection District, as listed on the building permit key.
I think that's limited residential.
All right, yeah, you're right, because otherwise, yeah.
This is limited residential. I'll repeat that. The lot in question is in the Island Residential Resource Protection District, not the Island Residential Limited Residential District. As listed in the building permit key to the member at this SPPA. Shoreline.
Permit application.
Right.
This is really long.
Okay, the location of the accessory structure is in the coastal bluff zone, which lists the terrain as unstable. That's in shoreline zoning ordinance appendix B. The lot in question is also in the steep slopes zone per submitted topographical map in the town of Big Island steep slopes map. According to the shoreline zone section 204.3.8.2, for a parcel of land with coastal bluffs that have been rated unstable or highly unstable by the Maine Geological Survey, setback measurements for principal structures shall be taken from the top of that bluff, not the normal high water or upland edge of coastal wetland. Zoning ordinance section 110 is in defining net residential acreage, states that net residential acreage shall be determined by subtracting from the gross acreage available following 15% for roads and parking, other areas which are difficult to develop in their natural state because of topography, drainage, or subsoil conditions. Specific conditions include but are not limited to slopes in excess of 20%, sustained for 30,000 square feet or more. Wetlands as defined in the federal manual for identifying and delineating jurisdictional wetlands dated the 10th of January 89 and as amended from time to time. The plot plan as submitted does not take the measurement from the top of the coastal bluff. Thus, net residential acreage of 107 Cottage Road cannot include any portion below the top of the coastal bluff and must be also subtract 15% for roads and parking. The zoning value for a net residential acreage or not net usable acres is perhaps an acre at most. And I'm even through, but more likely 3/4 of an acre. Shoreline zone ordinance section 204.2 requires 30,000 square feet per dwelling unit. There is already a principal structure on this property, therefore there is insufficient net residential acreage to build any accessory structure, even if all other rules were met. Driveway extension depicted as a dusty swirl shows no dimensions or even a precise location, so there's no way of knowing how much this considerable incursion into the coastal bluff zone will affect this unstable area. According to shoreline zoning and zoning ordinance section 110, a driveway shall mean a vehicular access way less than 500 feet in length, serving 2 family dwellings or 1 2-family dwelling or less. Okay, so
Going back to 204.2.
Yep.
30,000 square feet per dwelling unit. That's the shoreline zone. That's from the table that also says you have to have 150 feet of shoreline per dwelling unit. That's only in the shoreline zone, which would mean 1 dwelling unit in the shoreline zone.
But if you can't,
Right.
if you can't put anything in the.
I'm not
Oh,
saying, I'm
I'm
just
just
saying,
trying-
in general, what
Right.
it
Yeah,
states
exactly.
is that's what you
Okay.
need per
Yeah.
dwelling unit. And dwelling unit is defined, basically as a house.
Okay,
So any lot that is in the shoreline zone is either grandfathered or has 150 feet of shore frontage and 30,000 square feet or greater on either can have 1 dwelling unit, right? So to have 2
Right.
dwelling units in the shoreline zone, you would need 300 feet of shore frontage and 60,000 square feet. That's the way I read the table.
that what do you, I mean,
It says per dwelling unit.
well, then I guess you would be right.
Right,
That's a whole lot of shore, that's high taxes.
yeah.
We're gonna be friends with those people. Okay, yeah, so
Where are
I think we're down to the clearing or removal of vegetation for activities other than timber harvesting, which the he brought up the clearing, the excessive clearing, I think. So we're just trying to cover all the bases that he brought up into the field, but it's basically,
I'm gonna go from there, just for the shoreline protection.
what do you think, Charles? Do you want to do the tree stuff just to address the stuff that?
And we're really doing a
Right.
review of the shoreline project permit.
But because we were all confused
Yes.
about what that entailed.
Yeah.
We're just covering our bases and making sure we address what the Gallaghers and Drews was brought up. So, on to the shoreline project permit application. We'll just skip the tree stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot here that isn't pertaining to the shoreline zone permit.
Well,
It's all-
according to he is not separating the two, I think, because because no one understood that you could get a shoreline permit that said for site work and then use that also to build a house. Remember? Right? So I think when in their memo, in his memo, he brings this up again and
Can I say something?
what?
You are limited to the shoreline zoning issues tonight. The other issues are the subject of a separate appeal in the Superior Court, which may be remanded to you for consideration, but we discussed this at the last meeting, and you have been talking substantially about the shoreline zoning, but you should not be talking about the zoning ordinance issues that you raised as part of this decision. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Good. So deal with the application.
Right.
Don't mind.
Should we go on to discuss, just get through the shoreline permit and then
Yeah, that's
think
it.
about it? Yeah, okay. So shoreline permit, shoreline project permit application,
Is that the specifically the actual application?
yeah,
It's been appealed.
it's been, yeah, was not clear. when it was. So the growth permit application key to the shoreline project permit application lists the purpose as single-family accessory guest house. It's already a single-family modular home on the lot. By definition, the principal structure, thus by definition, the guest house is an accessory building or structure. Shoreland zoning ordinance 204.2 regarding land uses in the shoreland zone states that the planning board, not the CEO, is authorized to approve the building of accessory structures in the resource protection district, provided that a variance from the setback requirement is obtained from the Board of Adjustment and Appeals, and that a person performing any of the following activities receives a permit from the DEP pursuant to 38 MRS section 480-C. If the activity occurs in, on, or over, or adjacent to any freshwater or coastal wetland and operates in such a manner that material or soil may be washed into them. A, dredging, bulldozing, removing, or displacing soil, sand, vegetation, or other materials, draining or otherwise dewatering, filling, including adding sand and material to a sand dune, or any construction or alteration of any permanent structure. The CEO is not authorized to approve a shoreland project permit application for 107 Cottage Road.
And that you say that because the lot is in the resource protection district.
Yes.
Okay.
Right? So the 107 Cottage Road file contains no application for a variance nor any approval of such a variance by the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. The 107 Cottage Road file contains no approval from the planning board for the shoreland project permit application or growth permit application. The 107 Cottage Road file contains no permit from the DEP pursuant to 38 MRS Section 480-C for activities that occur in or adjacent or over any freshwater or coastal wetland and operate in such a manner that material or soil may be washed into them. And this, again, I guess is new shoreline zoning ordinance 204.3.3 states that on a non-conforming lot of record, which this is not, on which only a residential structure exists, and it is not possible to place an accessory structure meeting the required water body, tributary stream, or wetland setbacks, the code enforcement officer may issue a permit to place a single accessory structure with no utilities for the storage of yard tools and similar equipment. Such accessory structure shall not exceed 80 square feet in area nor 8 feet in height, and shall be located as far from the shoreline or tributary stream as practical, and shall meet all other applicable standards, including lot coverage and vegetation clearing limitations. In no case shall the structure be located closer to the shoreline or tributary stream than the principal structure.
Now, this deals specifically with a non-conforming lot of record.
Right.
Right, so I guess it's me, right?
Good as far as I'm.
So do we want to go into it in case anyone wants to get into it? What do we think? I mean, okay. So we don't,
No, continue on.
oh, well, if we don't need to, we don't need, I mean, you're saying, yeah, you're right, since it is not a non-conforming lot of record, it doesn't really matter. But if it were in the resource protection zone, only they can't have a permit for something larger than 80 square feet
Right.
with no utilities. And it can't be located closer to the shoreline than the primary structure. Principal structure. So,
Let's get down to the growth permit application key. Does not include the required.
okay, so, yeah, the growth permit application key to the shoreline project permit application does not include the required septic design. The growth permit application does not include the lot area square feet. All subsurface sewage disposal, including outhouses and gray water systems, must be installed in conformance with the state of Maine subsurface wastewater disposal rules. The guidelines require a valid plumbing permit or a completed application for a permit when a proposed construction in the shoreland zone involves sewage disposal. The file does not include the required plumbing permit for this growth permit application. In the absence of the required septic design, there is no way to know how the effluent and gray water will be transported uphill from the shoreland zone to the existing septic field. The building plans provided for the building permit application of the accessory guest house in the shoreland zone showed 3 bedrooms, with all meeting the height and space requirements to be deemed bedrooms. The principal structure also shows 3 bedrooms for a total of 6 bedrooms. The existing septic design is for 5 bedrooms. The existing septic design is inadequate for the accessory structure. You want to read some of this?
Sure, the shoreline zoning ordinance and zoning ordinance require applicants for building and growth permits to comply with the following. Section 603.1.b, each application to the code enforcement officer for a permit to erect a new building or structure or to enlarge or move an existing one shall be accompanied by a site plan showing the measurements of the lot and all buildings, yards, parking spaces existing and proposed. The intended use or uses of land and buildings shall be indicated clearly. the permittees did not follow the requirements for section 602.1.b, the site plan.
Can we
for each-
stop a second?
Sure.
I can't find a section 602 in the shoreline zoning ordinance. One goes up to 9 to 512.
602. That's the equivalent. Then. So they all, almost all of them have.
Yeah, this is fine.
The zoning ordinance has 602,
But
but
I
not the
think the
shoreline.
shoreline must have it too, right? I mean, not a 602, but it must have something in here.
It does, the permitting process is defined. in Section 5023-4.
502.3.
Permits required. And 503 is permit application. And that's where it states every applicant for a permit shall submit a written application, including a scale site permit,
So
etc.
what's
503.
503? So this should be 503.
Yeah,
So 503 and 6 for shoreland and 602.1B for zoning. But they're essentially the same. So what this should say. So
that 602.1.b must be in reference to the zoning ordinance.
yes. So that's correct. So we just say the permittees did not follow the requirements of shoreland zone, section 503. The site plan for each permit is thus deficient in numerous areas.
It's really 503A and E
503
that are lacking. I think we addressed earlier.
I think so too. Yeah, I think we addressed that part anyway. And then we went over the shoreline. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we just go down to. So here, then, is that right? So. Should not have requirements of
Shoreline zone.
section 503.
503.8. You saying B2?
Did you say B, 2, shoreline?
No, A and E.
A and E.
E is in Edward.
Okay.
So you want-
So submitted site plans.
Oh, yeah.
The submitted site plan is supposed to be taken literally and show only a single tree labeled as such on the property, and a second similar but unlabeled puffy cloud symbol in the shoreline zone that cannot be assumed to be a tree. For the shoreline zone ordinance, section 310, covering roads, streets, driveways in the shoreline zone, the following standards apply to the construction of roads and or driveways and drainage systems, culverts, and other related features. Section 310.8, roads and driveways shall be set back 75 feet horizontal distance from the normal high water line of water bodies, tributary streams, or the upland edge of wetland, unless no reasonable alternative exists as determined by the planning board. On slopes greater than 10%, 20%, the road or driveway setback shall be increased by 10 feet horizontal distance to each 5% increase in slope above 20%. Section 310C, new roads and driveways are prohibited in the resource protection overlay district, except that the planning board may grant a permit to construct a road or driveway to provide access to permitted uses within the district. There is no evidence in file that the planning board granted such a permit. The building of an accessory guest house is forbidden in the shoreline zone restricted, what's it?
Resource protection.
Resource protection district defined by steep slopes within the coastal bluff zone. The plot plan accompanying the application shows no driveway dimensions or even the precise location within the shoreline zone. So there's no way to tell whether the plans are in compliance with shoreline zoning ordinance 310. The findings of fact.
Okay.
I think that the absence of a scale plan and a certified DEP certified contractor and the lack of an erosion and sedimentation plan. If I were, and I don't have the background in training or anything to be a code enforcement officer, but without those three things that the ordinance requires, as a member of this board, I would say, if we're looking at it again, I would issue it without them.
Even,
That's not to say they couldn't be provided.
but if it's in the resource protection zone, a district, it already says you can't build
Right.
anything.
Anyway, I'm still kind of gray on that.
Says it.
I don't know, how does anybody else feel about that? I mean, the map of the island is that shows the shoreline. It, to me, doesn't show it in resource protection, but if you take into consideration all of the coastal bluffs and the incline and blah, 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 you can say, yeah, it qualifies, but do we have the authority to say it is?
Yes.
If
The
it's-
Board of Adjustment and Appeals has the authority to decide which district things are in. It says it in section something or other. In cases of questions, it's some. So. Right there, zoning, shoreline zoning ordinance, section 202 states that where uncertainty exists as to the exact location of district boundary lines, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals shall be the final authority as to location. So we can say that it is or it isn't.
It just seems a little, to me, because when I look at the map, it doesn't show. It shows the hook in resource protection, it shows all of certain islands, but
But it shows it in steep slopes
yes,
and coastal bluffs, which are in the state of Maine
So-
defined as in a resource protection.
so we're saying basically that those things should be taken into consideration on the map.
Right, because it does, I mean, it is included in our shoreline zoning thing as an appendix B. This, right there.
Yes,
So the unreadable
It's
thing,
unreadable, yeah.
but if you,
That's my problem with that.
I think if you, maybe if you blow it up enough, it says, but you can sort of, you can see yellow. Yellow, so. And the steep slopes map and the coastal bluff hazard map definitely show that they're in the properties in that zone district. Whatever you call it. So the state of Maine and in our zoning ordinances, it says that you can't build anything on it. Except even if it were a lot of, a huge lot.
No, I hear you.
So I don't know.
aren't there a lot of other areas on Shabig that would meet that criteria?
Sure there are. Like Marty Trower could never build her house now. I don't know if you've been to her house lately, but it's this, at the yard is gone, basically. So, yeah, sure. A lot of. I think, yeah, if she tried to build her house where it is now, they wouldn't, no one would ever allow it. But it's not the property you're talking about, so really.
I don't think the map shows it as being resource protection.
That's the problem I have.
Yes, but it is according to the coastal, it is according to our maps. The maps that are included in the town maps
The
and
coastal-
in the,
It shows it
Shoreline
under unstable bluff.
I think if you blow, if we could blow this up,
Yeah.
it would show it, but. So. Areas of previous landslide, it says, right there.
Yeah,
Let's get these. I mean, that is what got Marilyn Butters in trouble.
so that lot was deemed to be in resource protection.
And she had to run that, she took all the vegetation off it, because she,
I mean, that's shoreline zone. That doesn't matter what district you're in.
right, but she had to redo it all and put riprap, and it was like $250,000, which was a lot of money at the time, because she just went out and had it and did it, and that's,
But was that because it was in resource protection or because it was in the shoreline zone?
it's steep slope. So it was a landslide area, so it was a hazard what she did. Once you remove all the vegetation, it increases the risk of,
Well, it actually resulted in the landslide.
well, there you go. That's why.
It was not hypothetical.
So,
I mean, you can't do that in the shoreline zone. You can't. You know, you got a field of goldenrod in the shoreline zone, you can't cut it. Unless it's been cut, you know, every 2 years.
right. No, I'm not sure.
I am.
So, you are, right?
I am,
And you have to be, I know John Suma got in trouble for cutting.
I'm still, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I think so.
some swamp or something, right?
No, it wasn't swamp, it was just cut down everything between the house and the shore.
If you learn these lessons. So you're saying it doesn't really matter in a way that there's enough to deny the permit
Yeah,
I
anyway?
think so too.
I think so.
So we just include this, but in the findings of fact,
Yes.
and whatever people want to conclude from that can, but we have for various reasons. I mean,
Well,
do you want to,
I think the reasons are pretty clear, right?
Mhm.
The
Okay.
the shoreline zone permit was lacking a scale drawing. It was lacking an erosion and sedimentation plan, and it was lacking a certified contractor. So would you issue it? Lacking those things. Not saying they couldn't have been provided. You know, just saying that given what we have, I would say, no, I wouldn't issue a permit. The ordinance clearly states you have to have those things.
What do you think, Bill? That there are numerous reasons to deny.
Sure. Other than-
So,
Yeah.
and so you can look at the findings of fact and for the reason, the conclusions would be for the reasons articulated in the finding of facts, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals has concluded the following. The first is that there's good cause to enlarge the time for appeal. And then second, the code enforcement officer's approval of a shoreline project permit application. Do we have to say what for driveway extension and guest house site is or is not valid? So we would say it's not valid.
Yeah, I think we have to make a motion to that effect. That the shoreline project permit application is incomplete and not valid because it's lacking a scale drawing, certified contractor, and an erosion and sedimentation plan. And that's my motion, if anybody wants to
I think we
second it.
can just generalize it and just say based on the findings of fact. It is or it is not valid.
Well, I like the specifics of what Cheryl said.
Okay, so
Yeah,
write those.
so
So based on,
code enforcement's over approval of the shoreline project permit application is for taking out the,
is invalid.
is,
for the-
it's incomplete.
Yeah, well, the permit is incomplete and not, would not,
That's not.
we would
what
not
we rule,
grant
though.
the
We
permit.
rule it, either it's valid or not valid, not that.
It's not valid.
Okay. So
See,
that's,
it said here, not invalid.
right, no, it is not, yeah. So it is invalid, so that's the motion.
Because it was lacking a scaled plan, a erosion and sedimentation plan, and a certified DEP contract.
No. I got two of the three though. So a scaled
Yeah, that
plan,
and it
yeah,
explains a lot.
I know. A scaled plan,
An erosion and sedimentation plan. And a certified DEP contractor.
so that's proposed by Cheryl.
That was my motion.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Chad. Okay, all in favor? Okay, so that's. So then the other ones by definition, do we have to mention them? The code enforcement officers of a growth permit.
We're not doing that. We were really only to review the shoreline project permit.
Okay, so based on the findings of fact and conclusions, the town of Shubenacadie Island Board of Adjustment and Appeals voted 4-0 as follows. The appellants have demonstrated that the time for appeal should be enlarged. The code enforcement officer's approval of a shoreline permit project permit application
Is reversed.
is reversed.
And I would leave in the 22 dash.
That's the permit number.
Number 10 motion.
22 shoreland project permit application 22 SZ2 is reversed. Okay,
So do we need a motion?
do we need, yeah,
Probably, yes.
make a motion?
I would move that the code enforcement officer's approval of the shoreline project permit application for driveway extension and guest house site 22-SZ-2 be reversed.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Okay. That's the last thing, that this decision can be appealed in the Superior Court within 45 days. Sure.
Are you adjourning?
We adjourned at 6:35. What?
Move to adjourn.
Or moving? Adjourn. Yeah.
Thank God.
It's just included in the findings.
Because everybody, except you.
No, I was covering for a long while. I couldn't figure it out, and then I said, oh, you have to look down. And then that's when I realized.
Quick comment. At one point, we talked about Board of Appeals issuing the variance. Board of Appeals.
No, variance or something. No,
For road plan.
that's what it says. Yeah.
Actually.
Can't do that either.
Just setback signs.
Just setback.
That was just from the ordinance. Reading directly from the ordinance. Not saying out quoting, but, yeah. Not having to do anything. Are they right?
The minutes from.
They are right.
Yeah, they are.
No,
Oh, that's because we just approved it. You make it, you want
If you want them, Bob, let me know.
Great. This has come up on-
you may have that.
You can have to keep it
That's a whole box of paper. And this. Well, this one looks just- Yeah. Right. So you have a copy of this. I guess we have to move that in there. Henry go back to school?
I have a.
Did you go back early? Did you go back earlier or did you stay with you? Oh my goodness, that's great.
How's he doing?
It's nice to have him back. Sort of.
It was nice. It was, because he wanted to. He actually wanted to, interact with me. He become quite a surly, teenager, it's like,
Yeah.
in order to go on, they have to really, in order to leave, they have to start fighting.
Yeah,
But now he's like wanting, now he's much more fun around.
yeah, you separated enough that you realize, yeah, you're not bad. Yeah, I can do anything I
He's
want.
back on the 20th.
Oh my God.
21st.
So he's just doing fine.
In that case, that's correct. That's correct.
Yep.
That's exciting, I guess. Then how long is this break?
Yeah. It's amazing. And they go to college, it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was